It was a moonless night when Ethan found himself on the open road, miles stretching out ahead of him like a black ribbon unraveling into the unknown. He had been driving for hours, trying to outrun the memories that clawed at the edges of his mind. The road was his escape, a hum of the engine, only companion in the dark. The highway was desolate, with only the occasional flash of distant headlights interrupting the darkness. Ethan had no particular destination in mind, just the need to be anywhere but where he had come from. Breakup with Sarah had been messy, leaving him with a heavy heart and an overwhelming desire to disappear, at least for a little while. He had packed his bags, filled his gas tank, and hit the road, leaving behind the life he had known for anything different. The radio played softly, a station that faded in and out of static as he drove further from civilization. He didn't care much for the music, but it kept him company, filling the silence that had grown too loud in his head. He glanced at the dashboard. The clock read 2:47 a.m. The night felt endless, the road a never-ending loop that twisted through the darkness. Then, in the distance, Ethan saw something, a figure standing on the side of the road. As he approached, the shape became clearer. It was a man, thumb out, trying to hitch a ride. Ethan slowed down, unsure at first, but something about the man's forlorn posture tugged at his conscience. He could use the company, and besides, it was dangerous to leave someone stranded on a road like this in the middle of the night. Ethan pulled over, the tires crunching on the gravel shoulder. The man approached slowly, his face obscured by the shadows. Ethan rolled down the window. "Need a ride?" Ethan called out. The man nodded, stepping into the light cast by the car's interior. He was tall and thin, with sharp features that seemed almost too defined in the dim glow. His clothes were worn, a simple jacket and jeans, and he carried nothing but a small duffel bag slung over one shoulder. "Thanks," the man said in a low, gravelly voice. "I've been walking for hours." "No problem," Ethan replied, unlocking the door. "Where are you headed?" "Just down the road," the man said, sliding into the passenger seat. He didn't offer more, and Ethan didn't press. They drove in silence for a while, the road stretching out before them in a straight line, cutting through the dense forest on either side. The trees loomed tall, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching out to snatch them from the road. The hitchhiker stared straight ahead, his hands resting in his lap, his face expressionless. As the minutes ticked by, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Roads seemed different, but he couldn't pinpoint exactly how. The darkness around them felt thicker, more oppressive, as if it were closing in. He glanced at the man beside him, who hadn't moved or said a word since getting in. "Been out here long?" Ethan asked, trying to break the tension. "Long enough," the man replied, voice flat. Ethan nodded, unsure of what to say next. The air in the car felt heavy, and the road outside seemed to stretch endlessly, with no signs of civilization in sight. He checked the dashboard again. 3:15 a.m. They should have passed a town or at least a gas station by now, but there was nothing, just the unbroken line of asphalt cutting through the dark. "What brings you out here?" the man asked suddenly, his voice startling Ethan. "Just needed to get away for a while," Ethan replied, trying to keep his tone light. "Clearing my head, I guess." The man nodded but said nothing more. Ethan felt a chill creep up his spine, the unease settling deeper in his gut. The road, which had been straight and familiar, now seemed to twist and turn in ways that defied logic. He hadn't noticed when it started, but now it felt as if they were driving through a maze, with no clear direction or end in sight. The headlights illuminated the road ahead, but the light didn't seem to penetrate the darkness beyond. Trees on either side appeared to close in, their branches arching over the road like a canopy, casting eerie shadows, danced in the periphery of Ethan's vision. He swallowed hard, gripping the steering wheel tighter. "Does this road seem strange to you?" he asked, his voice betraying the anxiety he was trying to suppress. The man turned to look at him, his eyes dark and unreadable. "It's just a road," he said, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "But maybe it's more than that." Ethan frowned, unsure what to make of the comment. The man's words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning that Ethan couldn't quite grasp. He tried to shake off the feeling of unease, focusing on the road ahead, but it was becoming harder to ignore the growing sense of dread. Time passed in a blur, the road ahead stretching on and on without end. Clock on the dashboard read 4 a.m., but it felt like they had been driving for much longer. The hitchhiker remained silent, his presence a constant weight on Ethan's mind. The road, once familiar and straightforward, now seemed alien, as if they had crossed into another realm. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as the realization began to set in. Something was very wrong. He hadn't seen another car for hours, not even a distant pair of headlights. The road had twisted and turned so much that he couldn't tell which direction they were heading anymore. "I think we're lost," Ethan said, his voice strained. The hitchhiker didn't respond immediately. He just stared ahead, his expression unreadable. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "We're not lost. We're right where we need to be." Ethan's hands tightened on the wheel. "What's that supposed to mean?" The man turned to him, his dark eyes locking onto Ethan. "This road? Not like other roads. It has a way of taking people where they're meant to go, whether they want to or not." Ethan felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. "What are you talking about? This is just a highway." "Is it?" the man interrupted, his voice calm but with an edge that sent a shiver down Ethan's spine. "Think about it. Have you seen any signs? Any landmarks? Anything that tells you where you are?" Ethan's mind raced. He tried to remember the last time he had seen a road sign or a mile marker, but nothing came to mind. It was as if they had entered a void, a place where time and distance had no meaning. What is this place?" Ethan whispered, fear creeping into his voice. The hitchhiker smiled, cold, eerie smile that sent a jolt of terror through Ethan. "This is the endless road, a place where the lost and the desperate find themselves, where time stands still and the road never ends." Ethan's breath hitched in his throat. "That's insane. I need to get out of here. I need to turn around." When he looked in the rearview mirror, he saw nothing but darkness. The road behind them had vanished, swallowed by the night. There was no going back. "There's no turning around," the man said softly, as if reading Ethan's thoughts. "The road only goes one way, and once you're on it, there's no getting off." Ethan's pulse raced, his mind reeling. This couldn't be real. It had to be some kind of nightmare. He glanced at the man beside him, searching for any sign of reassurance. Found none. The hitchhiker's expression was calm, almost serene, as if he had accepted his fate long ago. As the hours dragged on, Ethan's desperation grew. He tried everything, turning the car around, speeding up, slowing down. But the road remained the same, stretching out endlessly in both directions. The landscape around them became more twisted. Trees gnarled and blackened as if burned by some unseen fire. The darkness seemed to pulse, alive with a malevolent energy that made Ethan's skin crawl. He had lost track of time. Clock on the dashboard had stopped working, the hands frozen at 4:47 a.m. It felt like they had been driving for days, maybe even weeks, with no end in sight. The hitchhiker remained silent, his presence a constant reminder, the nightmare Ethan couldn't escape. Ethan's mind began to fray. He started seeing things in the shadows, figures lurking just beyond the edge of the headlights, eyes glowing in the darkness. Whispers filled the car, voices that weren't there, speaking in languages Ethan didn't understand. His hands shook as he gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white with fear. "This can't be happening," he muttered to himself, his voice trembling. "This can't be real." But it was real. The endless road was real, and it had him in its grip, refusing to let go. The hitchhiker finally broke the silence. "You're almost there," he said, his voice calm, almost soothing. "Almost where?" Ethan snapped, his frustration boiling over. "Where the hell are we going?" The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned to look at Ethan, his eyes dark and deep, as if they held the secrets of the universe. "The road only takes you where you're meant to go. You'll find out soon enough." Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. He didn't want to know where the road was taking him. He just wanted to escape, to wake up from this nightmare and return to the life he had known, no matter how painful it had been. But the road, other plans. Ethan's eyes burned with exhaustion, his mind teetering on the edge of sanity. The road continued to stretch out before him, a never-ending ribbon of darkness that twisted and turned in impossible ways. The trees had vanished, replaced by jagged cliffs and deep, shadowy ravines, seemed to stretch down into the very bowels of the earth. He knew he couldn't keep driving forever. His body was shutting down, his mind unraveling under the weight of the fear and despair that had gripped him since he had picked up the hitchhike. But there was no stopping, no rest, no escape from the road that had claimed him. And then, in the distance, he saw it. A light, faint at first, but growing brighter as they approached. It was the first sign of anything different in what felt like an eternity. He wasn't sure whether to feel relieved or terrified. The hitchhiker sat up straighter, his eyes fixed on the light ahead. "We're here," said, a note of finality in his voice. Ethan's heart raced as they drew closer to the light. It was a small, dilapidated gas station, its neon sign flickering weakly in the darkness. It looked abandoned, but it was the first sign of civilization Ethan had seen in hours, maybe days. He pulled into the gas station, the car coming to a stop in front of the rusted pumps. The hitchhiker turned to him, that eerie smile returning to his lips. "This is where you get off." Ethan stared at him, his mind struggling to process what was happening. What do you mean?" The man opened the door and stepped out, his movements slow and deliberate. "The road brought you here for a reason. It's time for you to find out why." Ethan's breath caught in his throat as he watched the man walk toward the gas station. He wanted to drive away, to leave the hitchhiker and the gas station behind, and never look back. But something held him in place. A sense of inevitability, as if this moment had been predestined. The hitchhiker stopped at the entrance to the gas station, turning to look at Ethan one last time. "We all have our roads to travel," he said, his voice echoing in the stillness of the night. "This is yours." And with that, he stepped inside, disappearing into the darkness beyond the door. Ethan sat in the car, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew he should leave. Staying here could only lead to something terrible. But his body refused to move. He felt a pull, force drawing him toward the gas station, as if the answers he had been seeking were waiting inside. Slowly, he opened the car door and stepped out. The air was cold, biting at his skin as he walked toward the gas station. The neon sign flickered above him, casting an eerie glow over the cracked pavement. He reached the door, hesitating for a moment before pushing it open. The inside was dark, the shelves dusty and empty. The smell of decay hung in the air, and the only sound was the faint hum of a dying fluorescent light overhead. Ethan stepped inside, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The hitchhiker was nowhere to be seen, but he knew he was close, watching from the shadows. As he walked further into the gas station, he noticed something on the far wall, a large, cracked mirror, its surface covered in dust and grime. He felt drawn to it, as if it held the key to the nightmare he had been living. He approached the mirror, his reflection barely visible in the murky glass. Slowly, he reached out to wipe away the dust, revealing the image beneath. What he saw made his blood run cold. It wasn't his reflection staring back at him. It was the hitchhiker. The same dark eyes, the same sharp features, but twisted into a cruel, mocking smile. Ethan stumbled back, his mind reeling. And then the hitchhiker in the mirror spoke. "You've been on this road for a long time, Ethan," he said, his voice low and menacing. "But it's not the road that's endless. It's you." Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as the realization hit him. This was his fate, trapped on the endless road, driving endlessly, forever searching for something that didn't exist. The hitchhiker was a part of him. The darkness he had tried to escape could never outrun. The mirror cracked, splintering into 1,000 pieces, each reflecting Ethan's terrified face. The gas station around him began to crumble, the walls collapsing in on themselves, the floor splitting open to reveal a void of endless darkness. Ethan tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The darkness consumed him, pulling him down into the abyss. The last thing he heard was the hitchhiker's laughter echoing in his mind. And then there was nothing. Just the endless road, waiting for its next traveler, ready to claim another soul.